And meanwhile, we have live snooker going on. Ryan Day against Mark Allen. You couldn't separate these two. It's 6 frames all, bringing us right up to date with a thrilling climax to the British Open final. It's got to finish tonight. Let's say hello to our snooker expert, Marcus Stead. Hello, Marcus.
Good evening, Johnny. Good to be with you.
It's always good to speak to you. Now, Marty Feldman eyes you've got today, because you've got one eye on me and you've got one eye on the snooker.
How was that?
That's it. Well done. Very good. How's it going? Tell us about the two players, first of all. Who is favourite? Who was favourite before the championship underway?
Well, Johnny, the thing about the British Open is it's the FA Cup of snooker, because it's a fresh draw after every round. This is taking the British Open back to its roots. I mean, there was some footage on YouTube I saw the other day of the old days. It was about 1990, I think it was. And Alan Hughes was the MC, well-known snooker MC. And the most expensive footballer in the country at the time was Dean Saunders, who was at Derby County. And he was brought into the arena to do the draw. And like it was in those days, they've revived it since the British Open was revived last year after, a 14-year gap. It's a fresh draw after every round. So we had lots of big-name matchups early on, but also lots of shocks. I mean, Ronnie O'Sullivan lost to Alexander Erstenbacher, a Swiss player. I think he's world number 62 or 63 at the moment. Well, Ronnie has lost to him twice before, actually once in the Welsh Open, but this is sort of his bogey player. We also had a 1-4-7 for Mark Selby. But at the semi-final stage yesterday, Johnny, Mark Allen beat Nopon Sangam from Thailand 6-1 yesterday afternoon. That was on the main ITV channel. There was a minimum of a half century in every frame. And then late last night, Ryan Day won his semi-final against Robbie Williams, the Bushman he's known as. That was a late night decider. But this afternoon now and into this evening, they ended the afternoon session at 4-4. It's now 6-6. First to 10 wins tonight. The winner gets £100,000 and the Clive Everton Trophy.
That's a big prize pot, isn't it?
Well, it is, Johnny. I mean, the thing about snooker is that since Barry Hearn took control of the professional game in late 2009, within 5 years, prize money trebled. And there's also a lot more tournaments. I think in the years immediately before Barry Hearn took over, we were down to 6 ranking tournaments per season, plus the Masters. Before the pandemic, and maybe we can explore this in a minute, before the pandemic, in the winter, into the spring, and even indeed in the autumn, there was a tournament more or less every week, every other week at the bare minimum. Snooker has undergone a huge transformation and revival in the last decade and a bit, Johnny.
It has, and perhaps it's nowhere near the stellar sport that it was in the 1980s, and perhaps capitalising on the demise of football as it was throughout the 1980s before the disaster of Hillsborough kind of woke football up and changed it forever. Italia 90 was also a very pivotal moment. But it is on terrestrial television, and that's more than you can say for cricket and various other things. Snooker is in your face a bit more. And, of course, with Ronnie O'Sullivan, they have a household name who transcends the sport.
Well, he does, Johnny. I mean, the thing about Ronnie O'Sullivan, he won his 7th world title back at the start of May. So in terms of World Championships won, he's now level with Stephen Hendry. Until about May of this year, if people said to me who was the greatest of all time, I always answered, in terms of natural ability, Ronnie O'Sullivan, but in terms of making the most of the talent he had, Stephen Hendry. Now I give a slightly different answer, because they are level in terms of World Championships won. And Ronnie O'Sullivan is still at the top of his game. It is, 46 years of age. Stephen Hendry had peaked by his late 20s, early 30s. And Ronnie O'Sullivan is still there, albeit, as we saw this week, you never quite know which version of Ronnie O'Sullivan is going to turn up from one day to the next. But in terms of snooker's box office attraction, we see a spike in viewing figures whenever he plays, whenever he reaches a major final. The TV companies, I mean, there's 3 good contracts in place with BBC, ITV and Eurosport. And they absolutely love it whenever he reaches a final, because he is the box office name even now.
Does he get extra money for appearing in finals? For appearing in the low end? Because he shouldn't he? If you think about it.
Well, I don't think so, Johnny.
He's the star player.
Well, he is, but you look at the structure in snooker. I mean, okay, the big problem has been in the last 10, 12 years or so is that Barry Hearn had a policy of not paying first-round losers. So you had this situation where everyone entered the draw at the same stage. That's another change he made. It was flat draws all the way through. So if there's 128 players in a draw, if you're, say, those below about 64 in the world rankings have really struggled to make a living. So you could be in a situation where you fly out to China to play in the China Open, the China Championship, any of those events that existed before the pandemic. You're on an outside table, you lose in the first round, and you've got to fly all the way back, and you haven't made a single penny in prize money, and you've had to pay for your flight and your hotel. What's changed now, Johnny, is that there's a £20,000 minimum payment, which they say is to help with the cost of living crisis. So you get £10,000 last month, now end of September, another £10,000 in January, and that is offset against your prize money. So if you win £10,000 this week in the British Open, you don't get that 10 grand. It's offset against what you've been given already. But Ronnie O'Sullivan doesn't need appearance money, Johnny. I mean, if he makes a major final, you know, he's making a six-figure sum. You saw the money he got for winning the World Championship. He is the box office attraction. And, of course, with exhibitions and other sponsorship endorsements he gets, life is all right for him, really.
It's all right, isn't it? Marcus, I've got a lovely story where I was in the press room at Wembley for the Benson and Hedges Masters, and it was 1:58 and 40 seconds, and I knew that the session was going to start at 2 o'clock, and he didn't have his bow tie on. I said, hadn't you better get down there? And he went, yeah. And he sort of hung around for another 15 seconds and then popped downstairs and put his bow tie on, and there he was, ready to play snooker. An unbelievable chap. Marcus Stead, thank you very much indeed for joining us, talking about the British Open snooker. Talk TV.